Readings of Almighty God's Words. Exposing Antichrists.
Item 12. They want to withdraw when they have no status and no hope of gaining blessings. 2. Antichrists' approach to adjustments to their duty. Antichrists have an incredibly stubborn attitude when it comes to gaining blessings. They cling to their intent to gain blessings for dear life, and when they are pruned, they feel resistant, and they try with all their might to dispute it and defend themselves. From this, we can determine that antichrists don't accept the truth at all. When they are dismissed or their duties are adjusted, they feel very sensitive about the matter of gaining blessings. Why do they feel sensitive about it? Because such people's hearts are filled with the desire and ambition to gain blessings. Everything they do is for the sake of gaining blessings, not for the sake of anything else. Their greatest wish in life is to gain blessings. This is why, when they are dismissed or their duties are adjusted, they feel their hope of gaining blessings is gone, and they naturally refuse to submit and keep arguing on their own behalf. They only consider their own interests and do not consider the work of God's house. For example, some people believe themselves to be skilled in the written word, so they strenuously demand to do a duty that relates to it. Of course, the house of God will not disappoint them. The house of God cherishes talented individuals, and whatever gifts or strengths people have, the house of God will give them room to make use of them. And so, the church arranges for them to do text-based work. But after some time passes, it is discovered that they do not in fact possess this skill, and are incapable of doing this duty properly. They are totally ineffective. Their talent and caliber make them utterly incompetent at this job. So what should be done in such circumstances? Is it possible to just put up with them and say, "You have passion, and although you do not possess much talent and are of average caliber, as long as you are willing and not averse to working hard, the house of God will put up with you and let you carry on doing this duty. It doesn't matter if you don't do it well. The house of God will turn a blind eye, and there's no need for you to be replaced." Is this the principle by which the house of God handles matters? Obviously not. In such circumstances, suitable duties are normally arranged for them based on their caliber and strengths. That's one side of it. But it's not enough to depend on this alone, because in many cases, people themselves don't know what duty they're suited to do. And even if they think they're good at it, that might not necessarily be correct. And so, they have to try it out and be trained for a period of time. Deciding based on whether they are effective or not is the right thing to do. If they are trained for a period of time and do not get any results or make any progress, and it's confirmed that it's not worth cultivating them, their duty should be adjusted, and a suitable duty should be rearranged for them. Rearranging and adjusting people's duties in this way is the proper thing to do, and is also in line with principle. But some people are unable to obey the arrangements of God's house, and instead, they always follow their fleshly preferences in the performance of their duties. For example, suppose that someone says, "My biggest dream was to be one of the literati or a journalist. But due to my family circumstances and other reasons, I wasn't able to fulfill it. But now, I do text-based work in God's house. I've finally gotten what I wanted." However, his comprehension of the truth just isn't good enough. He doesn't have much spiritual understanding, and he is not up to doing text-based work. So after doing his duty for a while, he is transferred to another one. He complains, "Why can't I just do the work I want to do? I don't like any other kind of work." What is the problem here? God's house adjusted his duty according to the principles, so why can't he accept the change? Isn't this a problem with his humanity? He can't accept the truth and doesn't submit to God. This is simply a lack of reason. He always does his duty based on his personal preferences and always wants to make his own choices. Isn't this a corrupt disposition? Does the fact that you enjoy doing something guarantee that you can do it well? Does the fact that you enjoy doing a certain duty mean that you can do it adequately? Just because you enjoy doing something doesn't mean you are suited to it, and you might not be able to see through to what you're suited to. Therefore, you need to possess reason and learn to obey. So, when your duty is adjusted, how should you practice obedience? In one respect, you must believe that God's house has adjusted your duty based on the truth principles, and not based on your preferences or the prejudices of any leader or worker. You must trust that the adjustment of your duty was decided based on your gifts, strengths, and other actual circumstances, and that it did not stem from the ideas of one person. You should learn to obey when your duty is adjusted. After you have trained in your new duty for a while and have achieved results in performing it, you'll find that you are more suited to performing this duty, and you'll realize that choosing duties based on your own preferences was a mistake. Doesn't this resolve the issue? Most importantly, the house of God arranges for people to perform certain duties not based on people's preferences, but based on the needs of the work and whether someone's performing that duty can achieve results. Would you say that the house of God should arrange duties based on individual preferences? Should it use people based on the condition of satisfying their personal preferences? Which of these aligns with the principles of the house of God in utilizing people? Which aligns with the truth principles? It is choosing people according to the needs of the work in God's house and the results of people performing their duties. You have some penchants and interests, and you have a bit of a wish to perform your duties. But should your wishes, interests, and penchants take precedence over the work of the house of God? If you doggedly insist, saying, "I must do this work. If I'm not allowed to do it, I don't want to live. I don't want to perform my duty. If I'm not allowed to do this work, I won't have enthusiasm for doing anything else, nor will I give my full effort to it." Doesn't this show there is a problem with your attitude toward performing duty? Isn't that completely lacking in conscience and reason? In order to satisfy your personal wishes, interests, and pensions, you do not hesitate to affect and delay the work of the church. Does this accord with the truth? How should one treat things that do not accord with the truth? Some people say, one should sacrifice the individual self for the sake of the collective self. Is this correct? Is this the truth? What kind of statement is this? This is a fallacious statement, a misleading and disguised one. If you apply the phrase, one should sacrifice the individual self for the sake of the collective self, to the context of performing your duties, then you are opposing and blaspheming God. Why does this blaspheme God? Because you are imposing your own will onto God, and that is blasphemy. You are trying to exchange the sacrifice of your individual self for God's perfection and blessings. Your intention is to make a deal with God. God does not need you to sacrifice anything of yourself. What God demands is that people practice the truth and rebel against the flesh. If you can't practice the truth, then you are rebelling against and opposing God. You performed your duty poorly because your intentions were wrong, your views on things were incorrect, and your statements completely contradicted the truth. But the house of God has not stripped you of the right to perform a duty. It's just that your duties were adjusted because you were not suited for the last one, and you were reassigned to a duty that is suitable for you. This is very normal and easy to understand. You should treat this matter correctly. What is the correct way to treat this matter? When this happens, you must first accept the house of God's evaluation of you. Although subjectively you may like your duty, you are not actually up to it nor skilled at it, so you cannot do that work. This means that your duty needs to be adjusted. You should obey and accept your new duty. First train at it for a time. If you still think that you're not good enough and that your caliber falls short of it, you should tell the church, I am not up to this duty. If this continues, it will hinder the work. That's a very reasonable way of acting. Whatever you do, don't try to hold on in that duty. Doing so will hinder the work. If you raise the issue early on, the church will arrange a suitable duty for you based on your situation. God's house doesn't force people to perform duties. Isn't experiencing your duty being adjusted a good thing for you? First of all, it can enable you to approach your own preferences and wishes rationally. You may have had a penchant for that in the past, and like literature and writing, but text-based work also requires spiritual understanding. At the very least, you need to understand spiritual terminology. If you lack even the slightest understanding of the truth, just having a bit of skill with the written word won't be good enough. You will need to achieve spiritual understanding, understand the spiritual vocabulary, and come to possess the language of spiritual life through a period of experience. Only then will you be able to perform text-based work in God's house. Through a period of experience and going through things, you will find that you lack the language of life experience. You will see your staggering insufficiency. You will know your true stature, and you will enable God's house and your brothers and sisters to clearly see your caliber and stature. This is a good thing for you. At the very least, this will show you how high or low your caliber is and enable you to treat yourself correctly. You will no longer have imaginings about your own caliber and penchants. You will know your true stature. You will see more accurately and clearly what you are and are not suited to. And you will be more steadfast and practical as you perform your duty. This is one aspect of it. The other, which is the most important, is that no matter what degree of understanding you gain, or whether you can understand these things, when God's house makes arrangements for you, you must, at the very least, first adopt an attitude of obedience rather than being choosy or picky, or having your own plans and choices. This is the reason you must possess most of all. If you aren't able to reflect on what contaminants there are in the performance of your duty, that is fine. All that matters is that you have submission in your heart and can accept the truth, take your duty seriously, and show your loyalty, and that when problems arise or when you reveal corruption, you can reflect on yourself, understand your own deficiencies and shortcomings, and seek the truth to resolve your problems or revelations of corruption. This way, without you realizing it, your life and stature will gradually grow as you perform your duty, and you will come to perform your duty adequately. As long as you sincerely expend for God and never stop seeking the truth to resolve your problems as you experience God's work, you will receive His blessings, and He will not mistreat you. When their duties are adjusted, if the decision was made by the church, people should accept and obey. They must reflect on themselves and understand the essence of the problem and their own shortcomings. This is very beneficial for people, and it is something that ought to be practiced. With something so simple, ordinary people can figure it out and treat it correctly, without encountering too many difficulties or any insurmountable hurdles. When adjustments are made to their duties, at the very least, people should submit, benefit from reflecting on themselves, and have an accurate assessment of whether their performance of their duties is adequate. But this is not so for antichrists. What they manifest is different from normal people, no matter what happens to them. Where does this difference lie? They do not obey. They do not proactively cooperate, nor do they seek truth in the slightest. Instead, they feel antipathy toward the adjustment, and they resist it, analyze it, contemplate it, and rack their brains in speculation. Why am I not allowed to do this duty? Why am I transferred to an unimportant duty? Is this a means to reveal me and eliminate me? They keep turning over what has happened in their minds, endlessly analyzing it and ruminating over it. When nothing happens, they are perfectly fine. But when something does happen, it begins churning within their hearts, as if in stormy waters, and their heads are filled with questions. It may look from the outside like they are better than others at pondering issues, but in fact, antichrists are just more wicked than normal people. How is this wickedness manifested? Their considerations are extreme, complex, and secretive. Things that would not occur to a normal person, a person with a conscience and reason, are common fare for an antichrist. When a simple adjustment is made to their duty, people should answer with an attitude of obedience. Do as God's house tells them to, and do what they are able. And no matter what they do it as well as is within their power, with all their heart and all their strength. What God has done is not in error. Such a simple truth can be practiced by people with a little conscience and reason. But this is beyond the abilities of antichrists. When it comes to the adjustment of duties, antichrists will immediately offer arguments, sophistry, and defiance, and deep down they refuse to accept it. Just what is in their heart? Suspicion and doubt. They then probe others using all kinds of methods. They test the waters with their words and their actions, and even coerce and entice people to tell the truth and speak honestly through unscrupulous means. They try to work it out. Just why were they transferred? Why were they not allowed to do their duty? Who exactly was pulling the strings? Who was trying to mess things up for them? In their hearts, they keep asking why. They keep trying to work out what's really going on, so they can find who to argue or settle scores with. They do not know to come before God to reflect on themselves, to look at what the problem is within them. They do not look for a reason in themselves, and they do not pray to God and reflect on themselves and say, "What was the problem with how I did my duty? Was it that I was being perfunctory and was devoid of principle? Was there any effect at all?" Instead of ever asking themselves these questions, they constantly question God in their hearts. Why was my duty adjusted? Why am I being treated like this? Why are they being so inconsiderate? Why are they being unfair to me? Why don't they think of my pride? Why do they attack and exclude me? All these whys are a vivid revelation of the Antichrist's corrupt disposition and character. No one can imagine that over a matter so small as a transfer in duties, Antichrists will make such a fuss, cause such a ruckus, and try every means at their disposal to create such big waves. Why would they make a simple thing so complicated? There is only one reason. Antichrists never obey the arrangements of God's house, and they always closely link their duty, fame, gain, and status with their hope of gaining blessings and their future destination. As if once their reputation and status are lost, they have no hope of gaining blessings and rewards, and this feels like losing their lives to them. They think, I have to be careful. I mustn't be careless. God's house, the brothers and sisters, the leaders and workers, and even God can't be relied upon. I can't trust any of them. The person you can rely on most, and who is most worthy of trust, is yourself. If you are not making plans for yourself, then who is going to care about you? Who is going to consider your future? Who is going to consider whether or not you're going to receive blessings? Therefore, I have to make careful plans and calculations for my own sake. I can't make mistakes or be even slightly careless. Otherwise, what will I do if somebody tries to take advantage of me? Therefore, they guard themselves against the leaders and workers of God's house, fearing that somebody will discern or see through them, and that they'll then be dismissed and their dream of blessings will be spoiled. They think they must maintain their reputation and status in order for them to have hope of gaining blessings. An antichrist sees being blessed as greater than the heavens, greater than life, more important than pursuing the truth, dispositional change, or personal salvation, and more important than doing their duty well and being a created being that is up to standard. They think that being a created being that is up to standard, doing their duty well, and being saved are all paltry things that are hardly worth mentioning or remarking on, while gaining blessings is the only thing in their entire life that can never be forgotten. In whatever they encounter, no matter how great or small, they relate it to being blessed and are incredibly cautious and attentive, and they always leave a way out for themselves. So, when their duty is adjusted, if it is a promotion, an antichrist will think they have hope of being blessed. If it is a demotion, from team leader to assistant team leader, or from assistant team leader to a regular group member, they predict this to be a major problem, and they think their hope of gaining blessings is slim. What sort of outlook is it? Is it a proper outlook? Absolutely not. This view is absurd. Whether or not someone gains God's approval is not based on what duty they do, but on whether they possess the truth, whether they genuinely submit to God, and whether they are loyal. These are the most important things. During the period of God's salvation for people, they must suffer many trials. Especially in the performance of their duty, they must go through many failures and setbacks. But in the end, if they understand the truth and have genuine submission to God, they will be someone who has God's approval. In the matter of being transferred in their duty, it can be seen that antichrists do not understand the truth, and that they do not have the comprehension ability at all. Out of all those who are doing a duty, there will always be some who don't do anything well. They're not good at writing articles because they don't understand the truth, and they don't even have a grasp of spiritual terminology, of the language that Christians often use. They may have writing skills and some education, but they are not up to the task. If you have them proofread documents, after a little while it becomes clear that they're not good at that either. Their caliber is lacking, and they are always missing things, so you transfer them again. Then, they say that they have computer skills, but after doing a duty in that realm for a while, they're not good at that either. It seems like they're a good cook, so you have them make food for the brothers and sisters. It turns out that everyone reports that the meals they make are either too salty or too bland, and they either make too much or too little. Seeing they're not a good fit for doing the cooking, you arrange for them to share the gospel. But the moment they hear they are going to join the gospel team, they feel discouraged and think, "That's it. I'm being relegated to the sidelines, and there's no hope of being blessed. There's nothing to do but cry." Then, with a negative and down in the dumps mood, they sink and degenerate, and cannot keep their mind on sharing the gospel and bearing witness to God's new work. Instead, they are constantly thinking, when can I go back to text-based duty? When will I be able to hold my head high again? When will I get to speak with the above again, or participate in the higher level decision-making? When will everyone be aware that I'm a leader again? They wait for a few years without being reinstated, then start pondering. There's no point in believing in God. I'm just like those people who experience lots of setbacks on the path to becoming officials out in the world, aren't I? At the thought of those many setbacks, they become even more dispirited and feel utterly discouraged. They say, after all these years of being a believer, I haven't gotten to be a major leader even once. After finally managing to serve as a team leader, I was dismissed, and I haven't done a good job in other duties either. I really have terrible luck. Nothing ever goes my way. It's just like struggling through tons of setbacks on the path to becoming an official. Why won't the house of God promote me? My status and reputation have really hit rock bottom. No one even remembers who I am, and the above never mentions me. My glory days are over. What am I to do about my lack of success? I love God so much, and I really love the church and the house of God. So why haven't I enjoyed success? There's no point in believing in God. I really wanted to realize my grand plans here in God's house, to put my energy and strengths to use, but God just doesn't put me in important positions or see me. There's no point. What do they mean by constantly making noise about there being no point? They mean that there is no point in doing their duty, pursuing dispositional change, listening to the truth and listening to sermons, reading God's words, and seeking truth principles. Then, to them, what is there a point in doing? Having an official position, gaining blessings, having their desire and ambition for blessings fulfilled, showing off at every turn, being admired, and having prestige. To them, there is no point in anything else. When they feel like there's no point, when they're discouraged, then they find their feet moving toward the door of their own accord. They want to leave God's house, to withdraw. This means that they are in danger. There are some people who do a duty, particularly those who do a nondescript duty that puts them in frequent contact with non-believers. And some members of this group have one foot in and one foot out. What does that mean? It means that these people may withdraw at any time, and if their last line of defense collapses, then their other foot will take a decisive step out, and they will thoroughly break from God's house and leave the church entirely. When it comes to their duties being adjusted, things like where they are transferred to, what duty they do, whether the duty satisfies their personal desires, whether it enables them to be esteemed, and what the position and rank of their new duty are all connected by these people to their intent and desire to gain blessings. Based on the attitude and view that antichrists harbor toward the adjustment of their duties, where does their problem lie? Is this a major problem or not?
It is.
What is the problem?
They link the normal adjustment of their duties to their status in the church and whether or not they can gain blessings. When their duties are adjusted, rather than accepting and obeying the arrangements of God's house, they think they are losing their status and that they can't obtain blessings anymore. And then they feel that there is no point in believing in God and want to leave God's house.
Their biggest mistake here is linking the adjustment of their duties with gaining blessings. This was the absolute last thing they should have done. Actually, there is no relationship between the two at all. But because the hearts of antichrists are filled with the desire to gain blessings, no matter what duty they do, they will link it to whether or not they can gain blessings, which means it's impossible for them to do a duty well, and they can only be revealed and eliminated. This is simply them creating problems for themselves and putting themselves on a doomed path. How should you treat the matter of performing your duty? You must have the correct attitude, which is the prerequisite for performing your duty well. What duty is appropriate to you should be based on your own strengths. If sometimes the duty arranged for you by the church is not something you are good at or is not something you wish to do, you can raise the issue and resolve it through communication. But if you can perform the duty, and it is a duty you should perform, and you don't want to do it just because you fear suffering, then there is a problem with you. If you are willing to obey and can rebel against your flesh, then you can be said to be relatively reasonable. However, if you always try to calculate which duties are more prestigious, and you assume certain duties will make others look down on you, this proves you have a corrupt disposition. Why are you so prejudiced in your understanding of duties? Could it be that you can perform a duty well if it is one you choose based on your own ideas? That isn't necessarily true. What matters most here is resolving your corrupt disposition, and if you don't, you won't be able to perform your duty well, even if it's one you enjoy. Some people perform their duties without principles, and their performance of their duty is always based on their own preferences, so they are never able to resolve difficulties. They always muddle through every duty they perform, and eventually they are eliminated. Can people like this be saved? You must choose the duty that suits you, perform it well, and be able to seek the truth to resolve your corrupt dispositions. Only then will you be able to enter into the truth reality. If you always pursue fleshly comfort and seek to look good in your duty, you will not be able to perform your duty well. If you are not able to perform any duty well, then you will have to be eliminated. Some people are unsatisfied no matter what duty they are performing. They always view their duties as temporary. They are perfunctory, and they do not seek the truth to resolve the corrupt dispositions they reveal. As a result, they perform their duties for several years without gaining any life entry. They become laborers and they are eliminated. Didn't they bring this on themselves? Evil people and antichrists never have the correct attitude in their duties. What do they think when they are transferred? Do you think I'm just a service doer? When you use me, you make me render service for you. And when you're done with me, you just send me away. Well, I won't render service like that. I want to be a leader or worker, because that's the only respectable job around here. If you won't let me be a leader or worker and you still want me to toil, you can just forget about it. What kind of attitude is this? Are they submitting? On what basis do they approach being transferred in their duty? On the basis of impetuousness, their own ideas, and their corrupt disposition, right? And what are the consequences of approaching it this way? First of all, will they be able to be loyal and sincere in their next duty? No, they won't. Will they have a positive attitude? What sort of state will they be in?
A state of despondency.
What is the essence of despondency? It's antagonism. And what is the ultimate result of an antagonistic and despondent mood? Can someone who feels that way do their duty well? If someone is always negative and antagonistic, are they fit to do a duty? No matter what duty they do, they can't do it well. This is a vicious cycle and will not end well. Why is that? Such people are not on a good path. They do not seek the truth. They are not submissive. And they cannot properly understand the house of God's attitude and approach toward them. This is trouble, is it not? It is a perfectly appropriate change in duty. But antichrists say it's being done to torment them, that they are not being treated like a human being, that the house of God lacks love, that they are being treated like a machine, called upon when they're needed, then kicked aside when they're not. Isn't that a twisted argument? Does someone who says that sort of thing have a conscience or reason? They have no humanity. They distort a perfectly proper matter. They twist a totally appropriate practice into something negative. Is this not the wickedness of an antichrist? Can someone who is this wicked understand the truth? Absolutely not. This is an antichrist problem. Whatever happens to them, they will think about it in a twisted way. Why do they think in a twisted way? Because their nature essence is so wicked. An antichrist nature essence is primarily wicked, followed by their viciousness, and these are their main characteristics. Antichrist's wicked nature prevents them from correctly comprehending anything, and instead, they distort everything. They go to extremes, they split hairs, and they cannot handle things properly or seek the truth. Next, they actively fight back and seek revenge, even spreading notions and venting negativity, inciting and roping in others to disturb the church's work. They secretly spread around some complaints, judge how people are treated by God's house, some of its administrative rules, how certain leaders do things, and condemn these leaders. What sort of disposition is this? It is vicious. Not only are antichrists resistant and defiant, they rope in even more people to be defiant alongside them, to side with and cheer them on. Such is the nature essence of an antichrist. They can't even treat the simple adjustment of their duty correctly, or accept and submit to it rationally. Instead, They cause a fuss and give various excuses for themselves, some of which are unseemly and evoke revulsion and loathing in others. After spreading some fallacies and heresies, antichrists will try to salvage the situation for themselves and make others believe in them. If these measures don't succeed, will antichrists be capable of turning back? If they can't proceed down this path, will they be able to seek the truth? Will they possess any will to repent? Absolutely not. They will say, "If you stop me from gaining blessings, I'll stop all of you from gaining them. If I can't gain blessings, I'll stop believing." In the past, I've spoken about how antichrists are completely unreasonable. The nature essence behind this unreasonableness is that these people are extremely wicked and vicious. The item we are fellowshipping on now is the manifestations and revelations that fully exhibit this nature essence, and it is the most authentic proof of this nature essence. Some of these people become angry if their duties are adjusted even once, and some of them, after being transferred several times and moving from one duty to another, aren't able to do any of them well, and ultimately think that they have no hope of gaining blessings and want to withdraw. In short, regardless of how their duties are adjusted, if any adjustments occur, these people will analyze, judge, and mull them over in their hearts, and will only rest assured if they find that the adjustments are unrelated to them gaining blessings. As soon as they find that the adjustments have the slightest relationship to gaining blessings or impact their hope of gaining blessings, they will immediately rise up in defiance, exposing their nature essence. If they fail in this defiance and are exposed and rejected, they will prepare contingency plans for themselves and leave God's house firmly and without hesitation, no longer believing that there is a God, and no longer acknowledging that they believe in God. Their day-to-day lives will immediately change, and all the likeness of a believer in God disappears from them. They will immediately resume drinking, smoking, wearing unusual clothes and heavy makeup, and dressing up to the nines. Since they weren't able to enjoy these things as a believer in God, they will hurry to make up for this lost time. When they consider withdrawing, they will immediately think about their next step, about how they can work hard in the world in order to get ahead, find a place for themselves, and live a good life, as well as where their way out lies. They will soon find a way out for themselves, locate a place for themselves among these evil trends and within this evil world, and determine what they are going to do, be it business, politics, or another kind of undertaking that will allow them to live a better life than others, bring them happiness and joy for the rest of their time on earth, make their flesh more comfortable, allow them to fully enjoy life, and to partake in entertainment and leisure. When an antichrist is pruned, and when their duty is adjusted, what they think about is receiving blessings that are very closely related to them. When they think they have no hope left for that, they will want to withdraw, to walk away from God's house, and want to revert back to a non-believer's life. Based on this, it is evident that a person's nature essence is extremely important. So aren't their pursuit and choices also very important? It is merely the difference of one thought. One correct decision, and you may end up continuing to accept God's salvation, while one wrong choice can turn you into a non-believer in the blink of an eye, into someone who has nothing to do with the house of God, with God's work, or their duty. Just one thought, a single moment or one little matter can completely change someone's fate. One casual choice, one casual little thought, or a simple perspective can alter a person's destiny and can determine where they end up in the next moment. When people haven't encountered any kind of issue, when they have not faced any decision, they feel that they understand many truths, possess stature, and can stand firm. But when you face a decision, a major principle, or a big issue, what you actually choose, what your attitude toward God is, and what your perspective and attitude toward the matter is, will determine your destiny and whether you stay or go. The choices that antichrists tend to make, and their deepest subjective desires within their hearts, are all contrary to the truth. There is no submission within these things, only antagonism. There is no truth or humanity, only human corrupt dispositions and human fallacies and heresies. These things will often give rise to thoughts such as leaving the house of God behind and immersing themselves in evil trends, and at any point can cause them to think, if I have no hope of being blessed, why not leave God's house? If that's the case, I won't continue to believe or do my duty. If this is how God's house treats me, then I will no longer acknowledge God. These sorts of outrageously rebellious thoughts, these heresies and fallacies, these wicked ideas, are often present and lingering in an antichrist's heart. This is why, even if they do not withdraw halfway in their course of following God, it is very difficult for them to walk the path till the very end. And most of them will be cleared out and expelled from the church due to the great deal of evil they've done and the disruption and disturbance they've caused. Even if they can force themselves to hold on until the end, in fact, we can see from Antichrist's nature essence that it's inevitable that they will withdraw from the church. They may even think deep down, I absolutely cannot leave God's house behind. Even if I have such thoughts, I can't leave. I will stay here even until my death. I will hang on to God's house. I will follow God until the end. No matter how their subjective will compels them not to leave God's house, and how they insist that they must stay in their subjective will, they are ultimately fated to be spurned by God and to leave God's house of their own accord, because they are averse to the truth and wicked to the core.